Hey, what's up, bro? Hope you're doing good because we've got some fresh stuff to talk about in the world of Hell Let Loose. The devs just dropped the update 18 Hotfix 1, and honestly, it's one of those patches that might not sound massive on paper, but it's packed with balance tweaks and small quality of life changes that could really shift how you play the game. So, if you've been hopping into matches recently and something feels a little different, like your tank not getting stuck on random pebbles or your artillery strike not being quite as deadly as before, yeah, you're not imagining it. This hotfix is doing some serious behind the scenes work. Let's break it all down in a real way, not just patch note reading, but what this actually means when you're in the mud sweating it out on the front lines. All right, so first off, the big one, commanders. The artillery strike got some love and some pain at the same time. It's one of those changes that makes sense for balance, but it's definitely going to change how you think about using it. Before this patch, the artillery strike was pretty much the everything button. You'd see a cluster of enemies or maybe a couple of garrisons in a tight area and boom, problem solved. It was super satisfying, don't get me wrong, but it was also kind of busted. Now, they've toned it down a bit. The number of shells has been cut down from 16 to 12, which might not sound like much, but in the middle of a fight, that can be the difference between completely wiping a push or just breaking it apart a little. The accuracy has been reduced too, so you're not going to be landing those super precise kills as often. And it costs more, 125 munitions now, which is a decent chunk when you think about how much your team might need for airheads, recon runs, or bombing runs. Oh, and the cooldown, that's longer now too, up to 430 seconds. That's over 7 minutes, man, so you can't just spam it anymore. Now, the biggest change in that ability, though, is that it no longer destroys garrisons. That's huge, like game-changing huge. Garrisons used to be completely vulnerable to that strike, and if you timed it right, you could cripple the enemy's entire defense network. Now, you're going to have to actually push in and get those garrisons the hard way. Honestly, I like that change. It forces more teamwork and makes the infantry game matter more. Commanders will have to coordinate with their squads instead of just wiping the map clean with one click. You'll have to think, okay, where's my recon? Where's my infantry? How can I use this strike to soften them up instead of relying on it to completely erase them? It adds that extra layer of strategy that Hell Let Loose thrives on. All right, let's talk armor next because I know the tank players have been waiting for this one. Tanks got a pretty solid round of fixes and tweaks in this hotfix, and honestly, some of them were long overdue. The devs worked on steering, braking, and suspension to make them feel smoother overall. If you've ever been stuck on some random terrain that barely looks like a bump, or if your tank felt like it was fighting against you while turning, this is going to feel way better. They've fixed the collisions too, so tanks should behave more naturally when interacting with the environment. That means fewer moments where you get completely immobilized by some tiny obstacle. And specifically, the Panther and the Luch got extra attention. The Panther had some weird performance problems, sometimes getting stuck in strange spots or bouncing weirdly. That should be a lot better now. The Luchs, on the other hand, had way too much recoil after the recent knockback changes. It was almost comedic how much it would shake. But that's been toned down, so it should feel way smoother and more responsive. Basically, tank combat feels cleaner now. You can focus more on positioning and teamwork instead of fighting the physics. Now, if you're an engineer or you love whipping out the blowtorch, there's something in here for you too. Repairing vehicles with the blowtorch is now a bit faster, which might not sound crazy, but in a live battle, every second counts. When your tank's limping and you're crouched behind it trying not to get your head blown off, that faster repair rate can be the difference between staying in the fight or having to retreat. It rewards those support players who stick with their armor teams and really contribute to keeping them alive. Speaking of anti-tank stuff, the devs buffed the damage on AT launchers and AT guns. The launcher went from 325 damage to 380, and the AT gun went from 350 to 400. That's a noticeable bump. It means heavy tanks are going to have to be a little more cautious now because a well-placed shot can chunk their health much harder than before. It's a small change, but one that gives infantry more power against those beasts. You'll still need coordination and good angles, but now your efforts actually feel like they matter. I think this will make tank combat feel a little more dangerous on both sides. Tanks will still dominate if supported, but they can't just shrug off hits the way they used to. Now let's talk about bugs, because no update is complete without the devs squashing a few annoying ones. One that a lot of players were complaining about was the enemy flare bug. Sometimes flares that were supposed to only show up for one team were showing up on the opposing side's tac map. That's been fixed, thankfully. It was confusing and could completely mess up how you read the map mid-match. Another one was about recon tanks and half-tracks not being repairable with the blowtorch, which was just frustrating if you relied on those vehicles a lot. That's fixed now, so you can get back to keeping your vehicles alive without weird limitations. There was also a weird bug where players could get stuck on the KIA screen if they died in fire-related damage. Super annoying, right? That's fixed too. And while we're at it, tank skins that were visible through geometry, yeah, gone. You won't be seeing random camo patterns sticking through walls anymore. They also addressed a small but funny issue with the Rain Hell achievement. It was triggering when you used the artillery strike, even though that wasn't supposed to count. That's been corrected, so no more accidental unlocks there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you put all these changes together, it actually shifts how the game feels. Let's say you're running as a commander now. You can't rely on artillery to do all your work. You've got to think more about timing, about coordinating your squads, and making sure your resource flow supports those expensive abilities. You might have to hold back a strike longer, or decide between using it to disrupt an enemy push or supporting one of your own. It brings a bit more tension to the role, which is honestly what keeps the game fun for commanders. For tank crews, the smoother handling is a blessing. You'll notice the difference the moment you hop in. Turning feels tighter, braking feels more responsive, and those weird collision moments are rarer. Combine that with the AT damage buff and the faster repairs, and suddenly tank fights feel more tactical again. You can push more aggressively, but also have to respect the threat from infantry. Engineers repairing mid-fight are now even more valuable. And for infantry, the change to the artillery strike means you're going to survive a bit longer in big clustered fights. You still have to watch for bombing runs and mortars. That instant team wipe from the commander's strike isn't as common anymore. This makes holding objectives or defending choke points feel a little fairer, and it gives you more time to react when you hear those incoming shells. All of this combined kind of shows that the devs are really trying to balance the game for teamwork. They're reducing the one-man army moments and pushing players to work together again. It's about creating more of those intense back-and-forth battles instead of one side getting steamrolled because of a single overpowered ability or broken mechanic. And honestly, Hell Let Loose feels best when it's like that, when communication and coordination actually matter. Now, one thing I noticed after spending some hours with this patch is that overall performance feels smoother. It's not like they listed any major optimization changes in the notes, but the general flow just feels a bit cleaner, especially in armor-heavy maps. Maybe it's placebo, but it feels like the little fixes with vehicle collisions and suspension indirectly help the game run better when multiple tanks are in play. And that's never a bad thing. The only thing I could see people being mixed on is the artillery strike nerf. Some commanders loved having that power, especially in public matches where coordination can be rough. It was a great way to just delete a problem, but at the same time, it was way too punishing for the other team. I think this change is going to separate the good commanders from the great ones. The ones who can adapt, plan, and use every resource efficiently will still shine, while the ones who relied on that easy nuke might struggle a bit more. But that's healthy for the game. Overall, this hotfix isn't flashy, but it's a meaningful update. It shows that the developers are listening, that they're paying attention to how the game feels in real matches, not just on paper. They've taken feedback about tanks feeling clunky, about AT weapons being underwhelming, and about commander abilities being too dominant, and they actually addressed them. That's all you can really ask for in a live service game like this. If you haven't jumped into Hell Let Loose since the hotfix dropped, I'd say give it a go. Try out your favorite roles again, see how the changes affect your usual playstyle. If you're a commander, start rethinking your strike strategies. If you're a tanker, test out the new handling and see how it feels in battle. And if you're infantry, take advantage of that breathing room you get from fewer instant kills raining down from the sky. It might take a few matches to fully adjust, but once you do, you'll probably appreciate how these changes make the game feel more balanced and grounded again.